Have you ever heard a story so terrifying that even a US president claimed he wanted no part of it? This is not a tale of superstition whispered by children or a campfire legend invented to pass time. This is a haunting that became part of American history, a true case that left hardened men trembling, neighbors speechless, and one Tennessee family destroyed. They called it the Bell Witch, and those who survived swore the entity was real. The Bell family were ordinary farmers in the early 1800s. John Bell, a respected man, moved his wife Lucy and their children to a quiet stretch of land along the Red River in Robertson County, Tennessee. The land was fertile, the neighbors welcoming, and the small white farmhouse he built seemed to promise nothing but peace. For years, life passed in simple rhythm: crops, church, children's laughter. But peace has a strange way of hiding what lies beneath. And in 1817, the Bell family would discover that something was watching them. It began quietly, so quietly that John didn't mention it at first. While inspecting his cornfields one evening, he saw a strange creature crouching between the rows. It looked like a dog, yet larger, with the head of a rabbit and eyes that glowed unnaturally in the twilight. When he raised his musket and fired, the thing vanished. The bullet hit nothing. He told no one, thinking perhaps he had been tired, his mind playing tricks. But it didn't end there. Soon, his children began to complain of scratching at the walls of their bedrooms at night. The sounds were faint at first, like mice in wood, then louder knocking, tapping, as though someone were dragging fingernails across the planks. They searched. Nothing. The noises grew bolder, following them room to room, always just out of sight. Then came the sheets. One night, little Betsy Bell, the youngest daughter, screamed so loudly the family rushed into her room. Her bedclothes were being yanked violently from her bed, as though invisible hands were trying to rip them away. Her hair was pulled, twisted until she cried. No one could see who or what was doing it. Neighbors were called in. At first they laughed, saying perhaps the children were imagining things. But when they stayed overnight, the laughter stopped. They too heard the scratching, the pounding on the walls, the slapping of unseen hands. Grown men admitted their courage faltered inside that house. And then the voice came. At first it was only whispers, like someone murmuring through the walls, words too faint to make out. Then over nights and weeks, it grew stronger. A woman's voice, harsh and mocking, sometimes weeping, sometimes laughing. The entity called itself Kate. It claimed to be a spirit, and it had one purpose: to torment John Bell and his family. But Kate was no ordinary ghost. Unlike tales of spirits trapped between worlds, this one was intelligent, cruel, and relentless. It conversed with visitors, recited scripture one moment, and cursed the next. It repeated conversations spoken miles away, proving it knew things it could not possibly know. It predicted events before they happened. And worst of all, it seemed to take a special hatred toward John Bell, swearing it would kill him. Word spread through Robertson County. Families came from miles away to witness the Bell Witch for themselves. Some hoped to prove it a fraud, others to confirm their darkest fears. What they heard sent many fleeing into the night, the disembodied voice jeering from empty air, furniture moving on its own, children crying as invisible lashes struck their skin. One evening, the Bell home was visited by men who were not easily frightened. Soldiers. Among them was none other than General Andrew Jackson, the hero of the Battle of New Orleans, a man who would later become the President of the United States. Jackson had heard the rumors and wanted proof. With his men, horses, and wagons, he arrived at the Bell farm, determined to see whether this so-called witch was real. As they approached the property, their wagon suddenly lurched to a stop. The horses strained, the wheels sank as if chained to the earth. No amount of force could move them forward. The soldiers cursed, beat the animals, pushed the wagon upping. Jackson himself reportedly cried out, demanding the spirit show itself. A shrill voice answered, unseen, laughing. "Go on then, General. You can proceed, but I'll see you again tonight." The wagon suddenly rolled forward as though nothing had held it. The men exchanged uneasy glances. That night, as they camped near the Bell home, the torment began. Invisible hands slapped soldiers across the face. Their tents shook violently. Their rifles jammed and refused to fire. The men begged Jackson to leave. And by morning, the general who had faced cannon fire and bayonets declared he had no desire to test the Bell Witch further. He and his men departed in haste. By now, the Bell Witch had become a national sensation. Newspapers whispered of it, ministers debated it, skeptics mocked it. But those who entered the Bell home with doubt rarely left laughing. And in the center of it all was John Bell, aging, weary, and marked. The spirit would not relent, and it had promised only one thing: his death. And the Bell family knew. The witch never lied. The longer the haunting continued, the more vicious it became. At first, the Bell family thought perhaps prayer and scripture would drive the entity away. Every evening, John Bell gathered his wife Lucy and their children to read from the Bible. The words of faith filled the small wooden house, but the spirit only mocked them. While John read aloud, the voice of Kate would echo his verses, mimicking his tone in a grotesque parody. Sometimes she finished the scripture before he did, laughing cruelly afterward. Other times, she would sing hymns in a shrill, off-key voice, twisting holy words into something unbearable. Even devout neighbors who had come to lend support were shaken, whispering that this was not the work of any ordinary ghost. But the worst of her cruelty was reserved for Betsy. Young, gentle, and innocent, Betsy was the spirit's favorite target. Her hair was yanked until her scalp bled. She was slapped hard enough to leave handprints on her cheeks, yet no hand was visible. Sometimes her body was flung from her bed, landing with a thud across the room. At night, her screams pierced the silence, waking the family, and the voice of Kate would rise above the chaos, mocking, "Poor Betsy, poor little Betsy." By now, crowds gathered almost every week at the Bell House, drawn by curiosity or dread. Visitors swore they saw chairs moving on their own, plates lifted and smashed against walls, and the family tormented relentlessly. The more witnesses came, the stronger the entity seemed to grow, as though feeding on their fear. John Bell, once a proud farmer, began to decline. He complained of strange sensations, his jaw stiffening, his tongue swelling, as if unseen fingers gripped his throat. Sometimes he could not speak at all, his words cut short as though the spirit had stolen them. His health worsened. He grew pale, thin, and weak, while the spirit taunted him night and day. Old Jack, the witch called him, using a cruel nickname. "I'll get you, Old Jack. I'll put you in your grave." Despite this terror, Lucy Bell remained calm and faithful. The entity often spoke with a strange respect toward her, even praising her kindness. Some claimed Kate once said that Lucy was the purest woman alive, but that protection offered no safety for the rest of the family. And then there was Joshua Gardner, a local boy who loved Betsy. Sweethearts since they were young, Joshua and Betsy dreamed of marriage, but the Bell Witch would not allow it. Whenever Joshua visited, the spirit would screech in fury, cursing his name. At night, Betsy heard whispers warning her to stay away from him. One afternoon, while walking together near the riverbank, Betsy felt a sudden sharp pain. Her hand went to her face, and blood dripped from scratches that appeared out of thin air. Joshua, horrified, swore he saw the air shimmer beside her, like heat rising from the earth, though no one was there. The attacks grew worse whenever Joshua was near. Eventually, Betsy broke down, weeping in despair. The spirit's voice hissed in her ear, "If you marry him, I will kill you." Unable to endure it, she broke off the engagement. Heartbroken, Joshua left, and Betsy's laughter, once the brightest in the Bell household, fell silent. The family realized that the witch controlled not only their nights, but their futures. As months turned into years, the legend spread beyond Tennessee. Ministers visited to confront the spirit, only to leave trembling when Kate recited their own sermons word for word before they spoke. Skeptics arrived determined to expose a fraud, yet left pale and shaken after experiencing slaps, pushes, or cold whispers in their ears. One cold evening, a group of neighbors gathered at the Bell home. The spirit began to speak, her voice unusually calm. She told them of events happening in far-off towns, news that no one in Robertson County could yet know. Days later, writers brought the very same reports. The Bell Witch had been right. She predicted deaths too correctly. When one neighbor fell ill, she announced he would die before sunrise. He did. When another family member prepared to travel, she warned of an accident, and it came true. With each prediction, fear grew. If she could foretell death, could she not also cause it? John Bell himself seemed to fade like a shadow. He often sat staring out the window, silent, his once strong hands trembling. Neighbors whispered that he looked years older than his age. Betsy's childhood joy was gone. Lucy prayed daily, but even her prayers could not erase the sound of Kate's laughter echoing through the house. And yet, somewhere in the torment, there was a strange fascination. People kept coming. Some dared to speak to Kate, asking questions, testing her knowledge. She answered with details of their lives no stranger could know. Secrets spoken in confidence. Family histories stretching back generations. It was not just a ghost. It was something older, darker, intelligent, and it hated John Bell. The nights grew longer. The air inside the Bell home seemed heavy, pressing on the chest. Shadows moved when no lamp flickered. Betsy complained of cold hands brushing her skin. Sometimes she woke with bruises shaped like fingers around her neck. John Bell's health collapsed. By late 1820, he was confined to his bed, unable to farm or even walk without stumbling. The witch grew more vicious, screaming through the rooms. "It's time, old Jack. Your end is near." Neighbors watched helplessly as the once proud man wasted away. Doctors were summoned, but medicine did nothing. And the witch grew louder, more triumphant. December approached, a bitter, cold December, and with it came the promise that Kate had made from the beginning: the death of John Bell. The Bell family braced themselves for what they feared was coming, while outside, the town of Robertson County whispered of the day when the Bell Witch would claim her victim. And everyone wondered, when the end came, would the spirit vanish? Or would it only grow stronger? By the winter of 1820, the Bell farmhouse was no longer just a family home. It was a stage for something unholy, and everyone in Robertson County seemed to know it. People came by wagon, on horseback, even on foot, just to stand in the yard and listen to the disembodied voice that taunted from within. Some came out of pity for the Bells, others from morbid fascination. But no matter how many visitors arrived, the atmosphere inside those walls never changed. Heavy, suffocating, hostile. John Bell could barely rise from bed. His once powerful frame had wasted to frailty. He struggled to eat, to drink, even to speak. Sometimes when he tried to pray, the spirit would cut him off, her voice shrieking over his, mocking the words of faith until he fell silent. His eyes grew sunken, his face pale. Lucy nursed him with endless devotion, but her strength too was failing. The witch grew crueler, almost gleeful in her torment. Night after night, the family and their guests heard her laughter echoing through the halls. "Old Jack's time is coming, coming soon," she whispered, sometimes so close to John's ear that he flinched, though no one was there. One morning, when Lucy entered her husband's room, she found a strange bottle resting on the bedside table. Inside was a dark liquid, thick and murky. None of them had seen it before. When the family demanded to know what it was, the spirit answered clearly, her voice ringing out, "That's medicine for old Jack. I gave it to him myself." One dose more, and he'll never rise again. Terrified, the Bells sought help from neighbors. One man dared to test the contents of the bottle, touching just a drop to the tongue of the family cat. Within seconds, the animal convulsed violently and collapsed, lifeless. A chill swept through the room. The witch roared with laughter. "I told you," she shrieked. "He'll never escape me. Old Jack will die, and I will be rid of him forever." John's condition worsened by the hour. His limbs trembled uncontrollably. His breath came in shallow gasps. The once proud patriarch of the Bell family now lay helpless, surrounded by his terrified children. Every attempt to pray or sing hymns was drowned out by the jeers of the invisible tormentor. Neighbors gathered in the Bell home on the night of December 19th, 1820. They knew something terrible was coming. The air seemed charged with energy, the fire crackled strangely, and the walls echoed with the spirit's voice. Some claimed they saw shadows darting along the ceiling, shapes that did not belong to any human. John's breathing grew weaker. Lucy held his hand, tears streaming down her face, while Betsy and her brothers watched in horror. Then, in the silence between his labored breaths, the witch declared, "It's done. Old Jack is mine." By morning, John Bell was dead. The news spread across Robertson County with a mix of shock and grim inevitability. People whispered that no illness, no natural cause had taken him. The Bell Witch had fulfilled her vow. But her cruelty did not end with his death. On the day of John Bell's funeral, as neighbors crowded the small country graveyard, the spirit's voice rang out once again. She sang mocking hymns, obscene verses, cackling laughter louder than the mourner's prayers, louder than the pastor's sermon. Those present swore they could hear her clear as day, though no one could see her. It was as if the Bell Witch herself celebrated the death she had long promised. Afterward, many expected the torment to end. Surely with John gone, the spirit would vanish, but the Bell family remained under siege. Betsy, in particular, was still tormented. She heard her name whispered in the dark, felt invisible hands clutching at her hair, pulling at her clothes. When she tried to escape outdoors, she saw shadows following her at the edge of the woods. Her broken engagement to Joshua Gardner had left her devastated, and the witch did not let her forget it. Whenever Betsy smiled at another young man, the voice would hiss warnings. "Don't try it, child. I'll tear him away from you too." And yet, the spirit wasn't always cruel. At times, she seemed to converse with visitors almost kindly, even politely. She could sing hymns beautifully, quote scripture perfectly, and discuss faraway events in uncanny detail. But her moods turned without warning, shifting back to vicious curses and violent attacks. Some began to whisper that Kate wasn't just one spirit, but many, perhaps even a legion. Others whispered darker things, that the Bell family had been cursed, that John had committed some hidden sin, or that Betsy herself was the key to the haunting. No one agreed, but everyone knew one truth. No other family in America had endured such relentless torment. In the months after John's death, the activity began to slow. The spirit's voice grew quieter, the attacks less frequent. Betsy was still troubled, but not as violently. The Bells clung to the hope that perhaps the nightmare was finally ending. Then, in 1821, Kate made one last demand. She told Betsy clearly, "Do not marry Joshua Gardner. If you do, I will kill you." Terrified, brokenhearted, Betsy obeyed. She ended the relationship once and for all. Not long after, the Bell Witch announced her departure. She said she would leave the family in peace, but promised to return in 7 years. And then, as suddenly as it began, the farmhouse fell silent. For the first time in years, the Bells slept without fear of whispers in the dark, without slaps, without laughter echoing through the halls. The neighbors stopped visiting. Life, fragile but steady, resumed. But the question lingered in every heart. Had the Bell Witch truly gone? Or was she only waiting? And if she kept her word, What would happen in 7 years? For 7 years, the Bell farmhouse stood in uneasy silence. The family tried to stitch their lives back together after John's death, but his absence was a wound that never healed. Betsy grew into a young woman, still haunted by memories of the spirit that had tormented her childhood. Lucy carried on with quiet dignity, tending to her children and land, but her eyes never lost their sorrow. The neighbors, once constant visitors to witness the horror, stopped coming. Life moved forward, yet a shadow lingered, because everyone remembered what the spirit had promised. She would return. The year was 1828 when the silence broke. Without warning, the familiar voice of Kate rose again inside the farmhouse. Louder now, sharper, filled with the same mocking laughter that had once shaken the walls. For weeks, the family endured her renewed presence. She recited scripture, cursed, argued philosophy, and reminded them all of her triumph over John Bell. Yet this time, something had changed. The spirit was not as violent as before. She slapped no faces, pulled no hair, and lifted no beds. Instead, she spoke endlessly, as if drunk on her own power. She debated religion with visitors, quoted entire sermons word for word, and predicted small events that came to pass. People once again traveled to the Bell farm to listen, some leaving convinced, others horrified. But just as quickly as she returned, she was gone. After a few weeks of relentless chatter, the spirit vanished into silence once more, leaving only the memory of her voice. The Bell family prayed it was the end, yet rumors spread across Robertson County like wildfire. Some claimed the witch had moved on to haunt other households. Others swore they had heard her voice in the woods at night, laughing, taunting, calling Betsy's name. Still others said she had retreated underground, waiting, always waiting, for the right moment to rise again. Years passed. The Bell children grew older, scattered into their own lives. Betsy eventually married another man, not Joshua Gardner, but a schoolteacher named Richard Powell. Some whispered Powell had always wanted Betsy for himself, and that he had somehow played a role in the haunting to drive Joshua away. But there was never proof, and Betsy lived the rest of her life under the shadow of suspicion and sorrow. Lucy Bell, steadfast and faithful until her final days, carried the memory of the haunting to her grave. She never denied what she had experienced. She never claimed it was a trick or a lie. To her, and to the many witnesses who had come to the farm, the Bell Witch was real, an intelligence that defied reason, an entity that mocked God and man alike. As the years turned to decades, the Bell Witch became more than a family's nightmare. She became a legend. Neighbors passed the story to their children, who passed it to theirs. Preachers warned their congregations. Travelers wrote of the haunted farm in letters and journals. By the mid-19th century, the tale of the Bell Witch was known across the South, whispered by firelight, told on porches, repeated in hushed tones whenever strange noises echoed in the dark. And it did not stop there. Even in the 20th century, long after the Bell farmhouse had crumbled and disappeared into farmland, people claimed to see strange lights over the property. Hikers spoke of hearing voices in the wind near the old well. Some swore they heard laughter in the trees at night, the same laughter described by the Bells over 100 years earlier. Then came the cave. Not far from where the Bell house once stood lies a dark cavern, a jagged opening in the earth along the Red River. Locals began to whisper that the Bell Witch had retreated into those depths. Inside, explorers reported eerie phenomena, voices echoing when no one spoke, the touch of invisible hands, the sound of rocks tossed across the floor. One visitor claimed an unseen force pushed him so hard he nearly fell into a pit. The cave earned a name of its own, the Bell Witch Cave. Today, that cave still stands. Tourists walk its shadowed halls, some laughing nervously, others shivering when they hear unexplained sounds. Guides retell the story of the Bell family, of John's slow death, of Betsy's torment, of Andrew Jackson's flight. Some visitors leave unconvinced, saying it's only folklore. Others leave pale, shaken, unwilling to speak of what they felt inside. 2 centuries have passed since John Bell's death, yet the legend remains one of the most chilling in American history. Unlike ghost tales born of imagination, the Bell Witch story is rooted in countless testimonies, and neighbors, ministers, soldiers, even a president who swore they witnessed the unexplainable. Skeptics dismiss it as hysteria, as superstition born from fear. Believers point to the details, the predictions, the uncanny knowledge that no trickster could have possessed. Whether it was a spirit, a demon, or something far older, no one can say for certain. But those who lived through it never forgot. And even now, late at night, when the wind sweeps through the Red River Valley, some locals say you can still hear her. A whisper in the dark, a mocking laugh. The voice of Kate, reminding the world that she never left at all. The Bell Witch haunting was not just a story. It was a warning. And if you dare to stand in that hollow Tennessee farmland where the Bell home once stood, you may find out for yourself, because the Bell Witch is still waiting.